And we are live this November 5th, this Responsible Tourism Day 2014, with a brand new hangout about responsible tourism and parks around the globe. And we are joined by our great guest, Lloyd Gardner, in the Caribbean, and actually right now in California. Lloyd, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ron. Good morning, Ivar. Good morning, listeners.
Hey, listeners, if you're watching this, remember that we are accepting questions during the Hangout, so if you can join us via asking a question, please do so. I'm not sure if we can hear or see Ivar, but our good friend in Estonia is with us. Ivar, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning to you.
Yay! And so far we're able to see, are we?
Yeah, something is wrong with my Java update.
Oh my!
Excellent.
Well, good luck to you on that, and we will proceed without the video of you. We'll just have to paint a picture. Lloyd, I'd like you to introduce yourself, and could you paint a picture? Speaking of painting pictures, could you paint us a picture of tourism in the Caribbean parks?
My work is in basically a number of spheres, but I'm an environmental planning consultant, and in that line I do another related to tourism, related to parks in terms of site development, environmental assessments, environmental policy, training, etc. I'm also working with parks and tourism in terms of my non-profit work. So I spend a fair amount of time contributing to non-profit efforts in environmental planning and a range of other areas. So, for example, I am the regional vice chair for the Caribbean on the World Commission on Protected Areas, and in that role, I maintain communication links between the protected area professional groups in the Caribbean, and also, well, in all spheres of the work we do, public, private, civil society sector, research institutions, and just individuals who would like to know more about parks, whether they use them or they live adjacent to them, or they just like to visit for recreational purposes. So that's, in a very, very small nutshell, there's two parts of my life, if you wish, in which I contribute to the work of parks and tourism in the Caribbean.
Now, Lloyd, you've been working in this field for more than a few years. How has the concept of park management or tourism in parks, how has it changed in the past 20 or 30 years?
Okay, I'm going to share with you a slide that I used in a tourism conference early this year. And if I may, can you see this?
We do. Tourism best practices.
And so I used this slide earlier, in July at a coastal tourism meeting. And so to answer the question about how it has changed, in the, I would say, 1980s, we started seriously talking about, we meaning the Caribbean, in the Caribbean, we started seriously talking about ecotourism. And there was an ecotourism association formed, and so on and so forth. Since then, that has sort of broadened or evolved into responsible tourism, sustainable tourism. People are talking about agro-tourism, and all of the different geotourism, all of the different forms, if you wish, or what should I say, niches within the tourism umbrella. And so the screen I'm showing you basically gives you an idea of some of the initiatives and some of the institutions that have been active in the Caribbean and their contributions to this discussion over the last, I would say, 20, 30 years. And so I know most of the people will not be familiar with these acronyms, so if I may quickly run through them. UNEP CEP is the Caribbean Environment Program of UNEP, and they have contributed by preparing best practices, assessments, coastal tourism best practices, etc. They have done courses on siting, infrastructure, hotels, the rest of it. They have trained coastal zone managers, etc. Green Globe and Blue Flag, I think most people know in terms of the destination eco-marketing, and same thing with the Blue Flag, dealing with beaches, marinas, and so on. CTO is the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and essentially is our primary regional institution promoting and dealing with the issue of tourism in the Caribbean. And it's an intergovernmental group, meaning that it was created by a group of governments. And so they've dealt with ecotourism, sustainable tourism, and their big part of the sustainable thing now is that they have a sustainable tourism program within the Caribbean Tourism Association. They have Sustainable Tourism Awards. Annually, they have an annual conference, and they partner with a range of institutions dealing with sustainable tourism or eco or nature tourism or responsible tourism. The CHTACAS is the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. They established an institution or unit within that association called the Caribbean Association for Sustainable Tourism. And again, it is an attempt to look at the issue of tourism and environment tourism and the social side of it, and what they call equitable distribution of allocation of resources from tourism. IUCN, we all know, and some of the work that has been done in the Caribbean is on tourism. So, for example, there is a publication on hotel and biodiversity, or hotel and tourism hotel and biodiversity in the Caribbean. USAID is the United States Agency for International Development, and they have supported in the past a range of programs across the region dealing with environmental management systems in hotels. So again, conservation programs of water, energy, waste management, and so on. CREP is, I keep clicking and moving things around. CREP is a Caribbean Regional Environmental Program. It actually was a project that was funded by the European Union several years ago, I think in 2000, 2002, somewhere in that region. And it had an component that focused on what they call amenity areas. It is essentially tourism, well, not tourism, it is protected areas, but protected areas supporting other development activities such as tourism, community livelihoods, community recreational activities, etc., etc. So again, it was about use and livelihoods and economics around areas. The UNWTO, we all know in terms of the World Tourism Organization and how they promote best practices and guidelines. And there's been a production of a range of manuals in the Caribbean by many of these institutions that you see here, dealing with environmental management systems, community tourism, best practices, sustainable tourism, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to share that slide, Ron, to indicate that in the Caribbean, we have certainly there's certainly been an evolution of the term tourism and understanding the link between tourism, nature tourism, sustainable tourism, and protected areas.
Do you see, are there a good number of cross-linkages among these institutions, or is a good deal of the research kind of stuck in an institutional silo?
There isn't as much cross linkages as we would like. And so one of the things WCPA Caribbean has initiated this year. I mean, people have done it over many years. We're not going to take credit just for us doing it, but we're trying to actually formalize those linkages. So, for example, we have written, WCPA Caribbean, we have written formally to the Caribbean Tourism Organization to create a tourism and protected areas working group. And that formal request, a written request, has included an intergovernmental group called the Association of Caribbean States. It has also included the Caribbean Environment Program as well. So we're trying to not only work in the informal ways we work, but we're trying to put more structure and more formal agreements in place, and we're just WCPA Caribbean, that is, we're just at the beginning of doing that. So we sort of see ourselves as a facilitator to enhance the institutional linkages dealing with these issues. So we sort of share more information, and we sort of break, if not break down, certainly soften the walls of those silos so that there's more cross-fertilization, more synergies.
That's a beautiful idea. I want to get back to the language. Today we're talking about Responsible Tourism Day, and there are Responsible Tourism Awards being handed out in London. Well, they were, 6 hours ago. What are the words that the policymakers are using, and what are the words that actual tourists or visitors are using? Are they seeking the sustainable, or the eco, or the responsible, or is another language being used?
They are seeking the group. The numbers of people seeking are very small, still very small. And to give you an example of the impact of that, the size of the niche, there was an eco-lodge, if you wish, an eco-tourism facility on St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. You might have heard of this guy, Salinger. He was one of the early entrepreneurs in ecotourism, and it was, there's been a lot of work done on certainly from him and his investment. And there's, as I said, to some extent, I think his name and the activity has found it's the Maho Bay camps. I don't know if you have heard of that.
Yeah. So,
but the size of the market that actually goes to that is so small that the camp essentially eventually got closed down. And in the Caribbean, there is the Sustainable Tourism Awards activity or initiative within the Caribbean Tourism Organization, tries to encourage and facilitate, if you wish, more properties and more investment in terms of these sustainable tourism activities and design, and reaching out into the community and dealing with a range of issues, not just social, but issues of the integrity of the heritage programs, for example, maintaining environmental sustainability. So the terms like sustainability, integrity, those things are becoming part of the language, but it is still a small part of the total language. And so most of it is still about sea and sun recreation. The industry in the region is broadening that to some extent, but it is broadening it not towards environment, it's broadening it in terms of the awareness of the global marketplace for other forms of tourism. The geotourism that I mentioned, the medical tourism, there's this thing of food and food tourism, agro-tourism, and so on and so forth. So it is music, food, history and culture, but it is not specifically environment or sustainable in the context of environmental systems. It is sustainable in the context of broadening the economic base, broadening the offering, but not as much in the area of the environmental impact and the environmental support to the tourism package. It's happening, but it's a very slow growing movement.
I hear you. It is all about incremental growth.
Yes.
Much like we have a Google Docs open that is open up for editing. You suggestions, please, how to improve responsible tourism in parks and protected areas. The link is on our Hangout page, and we're asking, what would your suggestions be for park managers, for tourism operators, for locals, for visitors? It is a matter of connecting the dots and letting people know what they can do to make tourism a bit more responsible. We have lost again our good friend Ivar Rukul. Hopefully he can join us. He's having some technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll get him back in. And Ivar, if we don't have you in, make sure you're posting the relevant links on the Google event page. And many thanks. Ivar has been a big help on the Planeta Wiki. He's increased our knowledge about parks in Estonia. We're also requesting questions from our audience, and we do have two questions from Alistair McKenzie from the Travel Coffee Break. And he's talking about a U.S. example. Is Casey Knockett's graffiti trail going to spawn an explosion of copycat vandals? This was an instance reported by a blog called Modern Hiker about a graffiti artist, in quotes, artist, defacing protected areas in the western part of the United States. And the good news is that while she was posting her travesties on Instagram, it was also picked up and then researched by park managers using a website called Reddit. And they were able to track this person down and get this to stop. Will it spawn copycat vandals? Well, hopefully no. But the question, is, it's so easy to promote tourism when it's done well, when you can give the applause and when you can say everyone's doing everything right. The question comes when things aren't all right, and one point would be the vandalism. And in the case of the United States and our national parks, when graffiti has defaced these areas, the worst cases, being sites of indigenous petroglyphs, do we call people out? And I would strongly support the creation of some sort of irresponsible tourism award, in which we really tell people you are the worst. But it's a slippery slope, and how do we not get people to copycat bad behavior? I think it lies in telling people how to do things right and to applaud the good. Lloyd, were you at all aware of this graffiti case in the United States?
No, I had not heard of it.
It'll give you something to talk about with friends in California. But it's a terrible, terrible instance of this person not only defacing the national parks, but also taking photos and sharing with her followers what she had done. So yeah, that needs to be talked about and criticized. On a side note, do you find vandalism in Caribbean parks?
Yes, but not to the point where people call it graffiti. People scratch their names in trees and on stones. Areas like the petroglyphs and so on tend not to be defaced deliberately. But you do find people trying to leave their mark, so to speak, and it adds up over time, as you would expect. But it's not seen as a big problem at the moment, and I haven't heard any park manager complain that this is a problem at the moment.
Well, that's very good to hear. I want to do a little bit of a screen share. We were looking at it, very interested in looking and finding information on other websites. We were emailing previous to this Hangout about a colleague of yours. Can you tell us a little bit about the nation of Guadeloupe, or Guadalupe?
Well, I don't know a lot about this park, so I won't try to tell you. People can follow it. What I would tell you is that the individual that we spoke about in terms of my colleague from Gorlu is actually a staff member in what is known as the Regional Activity Center for the Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife Program. And the Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife Program is a program of the Caribbean Environment Program, UNEP Caribbean Environment Program, and it is based on one of 3 protocols for what is commonly known as the Cartagena Convention. It's a regional convention focused on the protection of the Caribbean Sea. And so what is known as the states of the wider Caribbean region, meaning not just the islands, but also the countries that border the Caribbean Sea, the continental states that border the Caribbean Sea are part of this convention. And the Regional Activity Center, FORSPA, actually coordinates some of the activities, the implementation activities under this program on behalf of the Regional Coordinating Unit. And so the person is, again, we're trying to connect the institutions. Earlier we spoke about these silos, and that person, that staff member is in the activity center, and they have been responding to our basically information sharing. One of her colleagues is a member of WCPA, joined this year. The program officer within the Caribbean Environment Program for SPA is a WCPA member, has been a WCPA member for many, many years. And so again, we have WCPA members scattered across these institutions in the public sector, private sector, and civil society. And we're saying to our WCPA members, help us to make the link at the institutional level. So these silo issues are addressed. And so I think that's what you begin to see, where this person said, oh, we're following the communications, can we now be more active in that process? And I think that's what you saw earlier on.
That's right, and we were asked, one of the questions that came up prior to this, and Lloyd, I'm going to ask you if you can share your screen of the website you've created. But the question was, do I need to be registered on Google to watch the Hangout? And the answer is an emphatic no. You don't have to be logged in to anything. You can watch the Hangout on Google, on the Google event page, or archived or live streamed on YouTube. All sorts of ways to keep abreast of these issues. All right, Lloyd has created this website, and that is our information sharing hub on Caribbean Parks, or Parks Caribbean. Walk us through this.
Okay, the reason for this, so I'm going to try and quickly give you some background and then sort of walk you through the site a little bit. The reason for this site is that a number of colleagues and I, in many years ago, attempted to start something called the Caribbean Protected Areas Advisory Service. And essentially, after the first, towards the end of the first regional parks project in the Caribbean, there was a network formed under that project, and because the project was ending, we didn't have a mechanism to provide technical support to the parks managers and the people who were in the network. So we tried to create an institution, design similar to a professional group that would provide technical support, information sharing, etc., etc. It didn't quite get any traction because we were trying to anchor it in a number of regional institutions. Well, we tried different regional institutions, I should say. It didn't quite work. Shortly after that, the Caribbean Environment Program, under their SPAR program, initiated a network called CAMPAM, Caribbean Marine Protected Areas Managers Network. And so the network coming out of this first project, and the first project, just to back up a little, was actually developed, sort of coordinated by Alan Putney. And Alan Putney was then, many people in the WCPA world or in the parks world might know him from the heritage side. But he was at that time in the Caribbean, and he was the regional vice chair for WCPA in the Caribbean. And he sort of coordinated the preparation of this project and had it funded, and it was funded by then CEDA, the Caribbean International Development Agency. It was actually managed by a non-profit, the Caribbean Conservation Association, which was at that time a member of IUCN. So we had IUCN playing a central role in terms of designing and managing the project in terms of its implementation phase. So coming out of that, we tried to, as I said, put up this support network. It didn't quite get any traction. About 8 years ago, we also tried under the previous WCPA Caribbean Vice Chair to develop a suite of projects that would support implementation of the WCPA Caribbean action plan. And one of the things we tried to do was to establish a network, a vibrant network that would provide technical support to projects, etc. We try to pattern it, or we call it the Caribbean Protectors Learning Network. At the time, WCPA was into this learning network thing. I mean, it was all about learning and transferring practices and supporting action on the ground. And so we patterned it off that, and it, again, no traction. Didn't quite work as we anticipated. So fast forward to about 2 years ago, we started going to the tourism people and say, listen, this is not working from the other side. But since protected areas and the environment is a big part of Caribbean tourism, would you be interested in helping us to make the linkages, to put this network in place that would work on the biodiversity side, on the conservation side, but also would support tourism? Again, no traction. So 2 years ago, last year, I went back to a number of my business associates and consulting associates and said, listen, this is not happening. Would you be kind enough to support us to do this? And so what they agreed to do is now to put this website in place. So we set this website up, and the primary purpose of this website, we're hoping to grow it from a website to a full web portal, but right now it's primarily a website. And the purpose of the website is essentially just to share information to anyone. And so that is its initial and primary purpose. And I will walk you through quickly. So one of the big issues with protected area support, I think globally, but certainly Caribbean, is that people think there are no benefits. I mean, it's all conservation and touchy-feely, and it's all about critters, you know, animals and plants. It's not about people. So one of the things we do, if you can see, I'm running the mouse across the top of it. So this menu box, second from the left, is about benefits of parks. And if you click on that, it walks you through what we call these benefits. It helps all of us. I'm just scrolling down, so if people are watching this, if not, you can always go back and see it.
Lloyd, thank you for scrolling. Yeah, we're seeing this perfectly. Perfect.
Okay, so we're seeing where we talk about water supply systems, providing food, supporting livelihoods, things like that. Biodiversity is in there, but it's not the only thing. Most park managers focus for some reason on the biodiversity and on the tourism, but they don't talk about the other things. Research and education. So all of these ways in which we benefit. Life and property, you know, we talk about the ecosystem-based adaptation, all of those things. Other benefits dealing with health and wellness and sacred sites. And so we figured it would be important that anyone trying to understand these various benefits and therefore the value or potential value to an individual, to a community, would be able to say, okay, I'm beginning to see it. Now I can go find some place or find somebody to talk about these values. So we thought that was important. Again, the language. So I'm clicking on another menu box, and it takes us to essential definitions. And we have tried to talk about these definitions in terms of IUCN, but also try to use language that most people should understand. And under the what we call protected areas on a 101. I'm going to go to a sub page, and this will um, show you some of the development activities in the Caribbean for protected areas over time. So it tells us a little bit about the history. I'm just blocking that to show you where it is. A little bit about the history. It also tells us what some of the current initiatives are. And again, to try to build these linkages, it is not this website or that institution, but there are a lot of things happening. So under what we call the current initiatives, we look at, and we spoke a little bit earlier about this one, which is SPAW, Program on Specially Protected Areas Wildlife, or UNEP. We talk about, so there are these different programs that we try to say, listen, all these institutions are working on these areas. Here we'll mention another IUCN program, which is the Biopalma Caribbean Peace. So we provide an introduction and a link to where you can find that information. If you want to know more, rather than somebody guessing what's happening, who's doing it, we sort of provide, as you wish, a link to those places. Publications, sort of opening up some of the active sites, active parts of the site. Again, access to information, training activity needs, climate change, financing, management plans. One of the problems in the Caribbean, and I guess in many places, is that people don't have access to the information. So the park manager knows, a couple of institutions know what the plan is, but many people in the community don't have access to these plans. They don't have the document because, of course, you haven't been able to print the document for everybody, or you've lost it. You know, it went with somebody, or it got lost in a fire, in a flood, or something. And so what we started doing was just to make the information available. The regional reports, the economic studies, all of these things. Now, this is a very, very small part of the information we have available. Not just that I have, what my colleagues have. This information is information that's already in the public domain. So we're still trying to get clearance, approval, if you wish, to put in other reports up, and we're asking people to share. So as more people start using it, we're hoping that more parks managers, more government institutions, more nonprofits will start sharing their information. Now, there's some critical things for this information that I think is useful, Ron, and it's not just the basis of a park management plan. If you look at this last topic, if you wish, general topics, we talk about, for example, here, how you design things, tracking fish movements to evaluate connectivity. Some of the research issues, some of the issues of monitoring and of economics, and trying to understand those things. Again, it provides information to anyone who wishes it. We have information, we have publications, we have case studies that we're hoping to put online. Some of the laws that we have, we're hoping to put online, but again, just the permissions to allow us to do this. Some of the other elements which we do not know have, but I think they're critical. Let me go to the bottom because I think they're highlighted more here. We have made provisions for what we call a country profile. And any country in the WCPA Caribbean region can actually prepare profiles of its parks systems. What are you doing? What are the numbers? And so we have actually been in contact with 12 countries in terms of submitting formal proposals in how to do it. The thing is, this is an expensive piece of work because to some extent it includes a detailed review of the management systems in the country, of the parks, plans and managements, of the whole framework. And then to put up a number of sites, to do the sort of detailed work for a number of sites, to put them online. And there's a cost to that which we have not been willing to bear from my side. I don't have the funds to do this. And so we've been trying to get the countries to provide some of the funding for that. And we're negotiating. We haven't gotten anywhere with it as yet.
Lloyd, two questions.
Yes.
Who actually edits this website?
Right now we have, I would have to say, a volunteer. There's somebody who normally does work for my company that we have asked to help with this. So it's not edited heavily. Every now and again we ask for changes and updates, but the part that I contribute to consistently is I don't have a lot of knowledge in terms of maintaining websites, but the events page. So I add events if somebody has an event happening. Sorry, if you look to the left side of the website, I can go in and sort of add that so that people can track. And also on the home page, we have we can post information, news, and so on. So we can just post anything that's happening, and we can add that as it happens. We can do that anytime, and so we can have a running. The other one here, we used to call featured articles. We changed this like in the last 2 months. We used to try to get people to talk in some detail about what's happening in their country, and for some strange reason, we have the professionals in the country, including WCPA members, contribute what we then call protected areas news. This was called protected areas news, and it was set up primarily to allow country managers and site managers to focus on their sites and their activities. So it's not general information, but it's what are they doing that we should know. And again, this site has been up for what, 11 months now, and they've never used it that way. We just changed this last month, and so what we've started doing is to go to professionals, to experienced people, and say, let's take any issue and do a more detailed piece, if you wish, not an article, but a more detailed treatment of that issue, whether it is marine cultural heritage, or it is financing, or it is a legal framework, and let's try and bring some analysis and some information to the general public, rather than just leaving it up to the general public to send us information. Let's take material to them, not just create the space for them to send us material. So we can do both through this site, and in this featured article section, I'm hoping that we'll be able to address some of the topical issues, such as I said, cultural issues, development pressures, values of sites, those kinds of things.
Now,
We
now
have
Lloyd,
here
Lloyd,
something
Lloyd, one
called
second. Lloyd, 1 second. You're saying that
yes.
this website was launched just a year ago?
It was launched in January, the beginning of January this year.
Okay. And you're saying that you personally, you're able to edit the calendar of events?
I can edit the calendar. I can post in 2 places in which I'm comfortable. So, for example, I can post information here, and this. All of these are basically features which, as you can see, that this posted by Light Gardener. So I can post things here, and we will post as we get these articles. We'll post on the features article side. Now, just to give you, to broaden that, we have invited. There's an open invitation here. Let me show you this, because this is.
Please.
Let me show this, right? Are you looking at the right side of the screen? There's something called a member logging. When last year, when I started talking to a number of, we had what we call country meetings for protected areas professionals. And one of the things people said to us in meetings, allow us, people with interest, to become members, to log into the site and post and help and edit and all of those things. So we said, fine. We weren't planning to do it because it required, for me, more work, and also we did not have a full-time paid webmaster at the time for this activity, for this initiative. So we said, well, this is a bit more work for us, but if you guys think you'll use the site, then we'll do that. And then, so we created this feature where we would allow professionals, people with interest, to do a range of things. And so we have membership guidelines, we have a form, and the system is set up to allow different levels of use, to post, to edit articles, to author things, all of those things. Here is the trick for this. a number of people said they wanted to be members, and we have a caveat, we have a rule that said that if you want to be, we expect that you will be responsive to the public. So if people ask questions of these members, that you will respond. If we ask you for help with editing or for contributing to a conversation, that you will. So it is not a paid membership, but it's also not a special club where you and your friends get to be in it by yourselves. The purpose of the site is to support the public's understanding and use of information in terms of protected areas and development, protected areas and their own lives. And so, yes, if you are a member, we require members to be responsive to the public, to the people who use the site, and require us to help them to understand how to share. Once we put that caveat on, people started walking away from, even people who requested membership, saying, oh, well, that's too much work. And it comes back to a question you raised earlier on about the issue of listservs and internet lists and email lists versus the sort of dynamics of a Hangout or the dynamics of a working group. Most people want to receive information, but in terms of actively contributing to the discourse, actively shaping how people see things or sharing information or going to go look for information to bring to a process, that's a bit more than most people want. And so we're still at it. There are people with interest, and we have people subscribing. There's a subscription feature here. So if all you want to do is get news, we have a process for you to do that. If you're not part of any network, and there are a lot of people who have an interest, they want to see what's happening, but they're not part of a network, and so it precludes them from hearing what's happening, from seeing information, although they have an interest. So any member of the public, there is no requirement to subscribe to essentially a news feed. The information we share through our professional networks, we also share to this sort of internet list or news list, if you wish. So we can get information to you even if you're not part of another protected areas network. So those are the sort of main parts of the site. But one last feature I want to show you, this thing called Parks and People. We have a feature inside here. We have created a space where any park manager, any senior person in a park, anywhere in the Caribbean, and the sort of the wider Caribbean region, can submit information, can submit a profile of your site. We have said, a lot of people have said to us, there isn't enough information at the site level. We're not being able to promote our site. We're working hard, we're writing grants, but nobody knows about us. And my question in the past has been, well, IUCN WCPA has a site where it talks about inspiring places. Why aren't you using that site? Is something off? Or is there a reason why you're not submitting to IUCN? People have said, well, but if you do it, it's focused on the Caribbean. This is better for us. We would like to do it. So we created a feature within this site to do exactly that. There is no cost to any park or any park manager anywhere in the Caribbean. Well, anywhere in the world, but we're focusing on the Caribbean here. So anywhere that wants to just submit a profile of their site. Almost a year into this, that we're offering this, not a single site has been submitted. In that period of time, we have been promoting the same feature on the WCPA's global site, and only one institution has actually submitted a site to IUCN. So if you look at the IUCN's Inspiring Places site, there are only 2 Caribbean sites profiled, one some time ago and one since we started this year. And the trigger for it might have been something else, actually. It might not have been us, although we have been promoting it heavily. So again, periodically, every month and a half, every 6 to 8 weeks, we send a sort of reminder, remember you can do these things, there's no cost to you, we help you to promote your site. It is, yeah. So again, it is not talking about what we're doing, because this does not promote the business end of my work. It does not promote WCPA. It is about parks in the Caribbean and all of the institutions that I mentioned earlier, the programming. It allows park managers and just the community to have a space in which they can actually share or use to just make connections to what they're doing or to learn more about protected areas in all its forms and for all its purposes in the Caribbean.
Thank you, Lloyd. Well said. All right, can I ask you to take away the screen sharing, and thank you for showing us the parks.
Sure, I can do that.
Page. You know, it will be very interesting to compare this video to a Hangout we could record in 6 months. You know, hopefully we could see that, yeah, you have more features in that section. I think it's a matter of repeating and repeating and repeating in different venues. You know, here are the options for you. And to also understand that, you know, a little bit about human nature, that, you know, certainly more people want to receive information, more people want to be passive recipients of information than people who want to be engaged. You know, as you know, we're both members of the Tourism and Protected Areas Specialist Group, TAPAS, and you know, I'm in charge of communication. And the fact is that we've made numerous strides and numerous advances in communication, but at the same point, to really get people to be engaged and to share what they're doing, you know, it really is an arm pull to get people on board that way. But you know, we repeat and repeat, and we also use different venues.
Yes.
I can't speak highly enough of, you know, the big change in communication that I promoted in the past 3 years was that the information about the group has to be diverse and spread out on the social web. So we do have a Facebook page, we do have LinkedIn. I am encouraging members to use SlideShare to, if you have a PowerPoint presentation, you know, why not post it up on SlideShare? Beyond that, you know, there has to be, you know, certain levels of capacity building and training, and in the realm of communication. And it's a shame that we think that communication is just so easy. And what we don't do is sit down and talk about how we are presently communicating and how we can improve our game. You know, we kind of just expect people to see how we're communicating, and that just doesn't happen. You know, we've seen, our friendship and our professional relationship. You know, back in March, we met at the planning meeting for the World Parks Congress in Mexico, and I led an impromptu guerrilla-style, you know, webinar of how to do a Hangout. You know, all right, we're going to have a nice 3-hour lunch. What if we cut it back by 2 hours and came back to the room and we show people how this works? And for most people, the fact is it didn't work. You know, they didn't have this, or they didn't do that, and so they had all sorts of technical glitches. And, you know, excuse me, we saw this on the opposite side of the Atlantic, where poor Ivar doesn't have a Java plugin installed correctly, and you know, had to drop out of the Hangout. You know, these glitches occur. But to press on and to continue. We're going to change track a little bit before we wind up, and we're going to talk about this big event that begins November 12th, and that is the World Parks Congress. Okay. And I'm going to show a little bit of a screen of where you can get some information about the tourism components. But Lloyd, a question for you. How big will the Caribbean contingent be in Australia?
Oh, it's the ones that have been confirmed. We're anticipating about 16 people that I know of so far. There will be some content from the Caribbean that's not presented by what you would call Caribbean folks, in the sense that they're not resident in the Caribbean necessarily, but they've worked in the Caribbean, or they're collaborating with people on the Caribbean side, and so the presentation may be done by somebody else, but it includes Caribbean content. So the entire contingent will not present, but I am seeing about 16 people so far.
Beautiful,
We
beautiful.
expect some more. One or two have actually had to drop out for a number of reasons, but right now we're seeing about 16.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to do a little screen share here and remind people that this uh, Hangout is being webcast, broadcast on Google Plus, and your comments are welcome on this page. We also have the Q&A app activated, so we have answered a few questions. But a nice show of materials. I want to switch to this page on the Planeta Wiki, and hopefully, I have you. Excuse me. I have blue boxed you or white boxed you. This is a page on the Planeta Wiki called the World Parks Congress, and we've created a calendar for the tourism events. And I'd encourage you to check out what's called the tourism journey. And these are all of the tourism-specific events that will take place in Sydney, Australia, November 12th to the 19th. And for your viewing pleasure, here is the calendar. I know you can't read this in detail, but the link will be posting. Let me show you. Copy. Go back to our Hangout page. Here's please. Here is the tourism journey at the World Parks Congress. Share, so you have access to that. The Tapas group has been quite active in the preparation for this event. We have held, the EXO committee has held our private Google Hangouts to discuss these matters, and I think we've held what are about 5 or 6 public Hangouts like this before the Congress. And my point would be, these Hangouts are no replacement for going to an event, but they complement the event, quite nicely. So hopefully, thanks to Lloyd participating in this event, you'll have a few people come up to you in Sydney and say, hey, saw this, saw you online. And going back to the Parks Caribbean webpage, I think, again, the strategy of improving awareness and knowledge of parks in the Caribbean, requires this multiple prong approach to how you share this information. Good old-fashioned listservs and email is fine, but if you can complement that with a Facebook page, or complement that with a Twitter account, and complement that with some of these videos, I think that would go a long way to improving the knowledge. Just the fact that you were able to walk through people the website on this Hangout, I think will stir some interest. But just brainstorming here. But what could we accomplish if everyone who had a parks and tourism related website just recorded a 2-minute walkthrough of their website? In other words, if you have an hour, great, we have an hour. But a lot of people don't have an hour. But if you give me 2 minutes, here are the highlights. And let me show you how we click through this and what you see. If you have any questions, ask me. But I'd love to get out of the silo. And we were talking about that with Steve McCool last week. But to share this information, I think we need to show people how we have set up the information. And to show this, warts and all. Some of these things won't work. And rather than shy away from it, we have to say, hey, this is not what we want.
Right.
But if we can return to this in 6 months and we say, hey, take a look at this. Hosting Planeta.com, the world's first ecotourism website, launched back 20 years ago, as I was a fan of what I call conscious travel. And we've developed all sorts of different niches to share information and to engage with people. But the sad fact is that 90% of people really don't want to be engaged that way. Right. They want to consume information, but to share, to critique, to correct, to add. They're just not there. So we have a little maxim called the 99-1 rule, where 1% of people actually create things, 9% of people might edit things, and 90% of people will read stuff. And there's no better example of that than if you look at Wikipedia. And it'll be interesting this month as we look at the Wikipedia pages about the IUCN and about topics like governance. To what degree are they going to be edited during the World Parks Congress?
Right.
Hopefully a little bit, but the question is finding those incremental changes. Growing a little bit, improving our knowledge, improving our awareness, and making it public. The final comment about openness and public access. I've been a big fan of open access, and we just finished Open Access Week, and there's already an Open Education Week scheduled for the spring. But many of our teachers and many of our institutional facilitators are not aware of how they can structure the information so that it can be freely copied, so that it can be freely shared. And if we can find examples of that, I think we'll do all of us a great favor. If we continue to putting information where people can't find it, and if they do find it, they can't share it, and beyond that, put it behind a paywall.
Right.
Then
right.
I don't. What do we do with this? So, those are my ideas. I wanted to show you, and staying on the World Parks Congress, kudos to the folks in New South Wales, and here's my smartphone. And remember, folks, if you're traveling to Australia and don't want to pay the high fees, just disable your, use the Wi-Fi, don't use the cell. But if we go into the apps, there we are. At the very bottom is something called paperless events. And they have, there we are, they have a whole guide to the World Parks Congress. And the link is on the Planet to Wiki. The link will be added to this Hangout event. But for example, you can download the whole schedule and the whole program. Now I like this. And if you click the full program, wish I could show you better, but this is what you get when you don't pay anything. You click that, and then you get into the schedule, and you're going to be able to choose, which events. For example, it says add to my schedule. So, as you're meandering about in the Olympic Park in Sydney, you can, get the information, find the map, get the reminders. Hey, you should be in this other place now. Okay, fine. Kudos to the organizers for making the event a little bit more green, a little bit more eco, and a little bit more digital. If this were an event in 1970, I wouldn't be asking for the internet, but we do have the internet in 2014. Why not use it in a way that we can freely share the information, get the word out about the fragility, the vulnerability of parks, and as well as their benefits. This is the time to articulate the value of parks, and in terms of tourism, the opportunities and the responsibilities we have as visitors. So, I'm going to be here on the west coast of the United States during November, and paying attention through a 17-hour time difference. But we have quite a few tourism events scheduled in Sydney, and many thanks to Anna Spenceley and the other members of the EXO committee for doing their best to make the information as accessible as possible to the people who are not in the room. I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll have one of the best information sharing experiences on the planet in November, and in December when we do a follow-up hangout and get a few people without the technical glitches participating. I think we can say, hey, this is what we've done, and this is where we see we need to go in 2015. And if we can do this sort of conversational information sharing, I think it'll do us quite well, rather than establishing 18 different more networks to participate and then ignore the flood of listserv emails. That's my idea.
Ron, since you were talking about communications and these kinds of events and just the incremental changes and learning, following the World Parks Congress, there is something in the Caribbean. There's a meeting that will focus on the Caribbean Action Plan for World Heritage in the Caribbean. And again, it is looking at what is needed in a sort of next plan, so to speak. One of the issues, part of it is a capacity issue. And so one of the things I would invite you to do while you're trying to track the World Parks Congress from afar is if you have some thoughts, or anybody who is watching who would have some thoughts about what are the sort of capacity needs for this kind of sharing, for using the various communication tools in the work of the people dealing with World Heritage or parks in the Caribbean, even without knowing the details on their side. If they have access to the internet, what are the ways do we need to provide tools, training activities online? How do we improve capacity, improve use of it? Is it dependent on groups like TAPAS providing some backup support in terms of training or information or the online mechanisms? Whatever it is, whatever your thoughts are in terms of what would be useful to advance an agenda in terms of protected areas and tourism in the region or anywhere else. So again, since we're talking tourism and protected areas and capacity issues, what are you seeing? And if there are people elsewhere, as I said, that have some experience or have some concerns or have some thoughts, please share them with me. I don't know if there's a way to get my email address directly now during the broadcast one, or just to share that on the site.
You know, the one second, Lloyd, you're making some really good points, and one point is, you know, as you're learning this whole Google Plus universe, you know, you're participating in this Hangout means that people do have access to your Google Plus profile page.
Okay.
And my suggestion is to update, and I've added that in the show notes. So make sure that that's updated, and I'll walk you through it after our Hangout. The other point would be a very cynical view of mine, in that when we talk about capacity building, we rarely talk about capacity building and communication.
Right.
You know, communication is this given, even though it's so difficult. And you know, my suggestion in this realm, whether we're talking about tourism or not, is the fact that there has to be a good bit of time stretched out over 6 to 12 months to develop a strategy that is personalized for a particular consultancy or for a particular working group or for a particular country, and to create the what is out there now. You know, for years people would be a little bit hesitant to look at sites like Wikipedia or TripAdvisor, but the fact is that's where the public is going.
Right.
So are we looking at these sites, and then do we understand how these websites can be edited or can be influenced? You know, they're quite different, and Wikipedia has its own rules. I host a Wiki Spaces site, has different rules, and the question is, again, looking at how to play by the rules for these different channels, and to also, as I say, what we talked about earlier, is to kind of insist on a certain, I don't want to say, a certain set of responsibilities and limitations for yourself. You could spend 30 hours a day on the internet.
Yes.
Don't do it. Don't do it. But, you know, can you budget the time? Can you budget the time that allows you to do a few things and that allows you to go to make some progress? You know, if we look at blogs often attract a lot of spam, and the question is, can you figure out a really good way of eliminating spam before it gets posted to your blog? But, you know, I've had people who, you know, just get, you know, freak out about this because they get these, you know, I keep on getting spam. All right, well, do you know how to delete it? And when you figure out, and you have to talk to somebody else who's the same problem. You know, I'm not going to a car mechanic to talk about my heart. You know, find out somebody who's been in a similar situation. Now, as an advertisement, as a plug, here I'm going to do a little screen share. I actually offer a Parks and Tourism webinar in which we go through this, you know, step by step. It's archived on SlideShare. Anyone who does not want to pay me, just go look at this website and take the ideas and just do the things it says. If you want to pay me, then great. You get more of my time and you get more of my attention. But you know, the fact is that, you know, as I say, you know, if we're talking about online engagement, it's about being attentive, creative, generous, curious, and empathetic. And you know, here are the different examples and all sorts of good examples on the screen, and just happy to go through that with anybody. You have access to it. As I say, you know, it's freely available. But the number one suggestion I have for folks who are interested in improving communication as a capacity is to really budget time and to say, you know, over the next 6 months, I'm going to do these things. I deal with, you know, far too many people who tell me what they want to do and then don't take that first step. You know, I deal with a lot of people who, you know, find reasons not to like something. You know, I don't like Facebook because, I don't like Flickr because. Okay, well, fine. But find a few things you do like and do them. But meanwhile, do you understand the value of Facebook really does help? For example, Tapas, it really has helped get the word out about the Tourism and Protected Area Specialist Group. Does it mean you preclude that with LinkedIn? No. You know, use LinkedIn as well. But you know, you have to, you know, as I say, create some sort of a strategies, create some sort of a schedule, and please, please, please find, you know, find time to go outside. You know, find time and opportunities to talk to people. And this is where I think our plan has to go in 2015. You know, we have a lot of consultants and we have a lot of park managers who are really good with, you know, sharing photos on Instagram or Facebook. But how do we connect with the community? How do we connect with people?
Right.
I think if there's a value to parks and if there's a value to tourism, it lies in that intersection of being able to talk to people. And if the locals are truly engaged, if the visitors are happy with their experience, then, you know, you have the best of all possible worlds. You have truly responsible travel. Responsible travel, which posits a better place to live, is a better place to visit. If you have a crappy place to live, come on, it's not going to be a good place to visit.
Yeah. Okay, Ron, thanks. But I'll follow because for us this communications thing is a big. I think as a whole we're doing it. Not as you said, we learn. All of us learn, and I need to get more people engaged in doing it because I'm not doing it well. I'm not comfortable, and there are people who are very comfortable and are really on top of this that we need to bring into the tent, so to speak. I need to get them engaged in sharing their time and their experiences with us to get this done. So thank you.
I think this is the month where it starts to percolate. So, and it cannot not be. Well, I do want to thank you for your time. Viewers, I want to thank you for watching. People who are watching the archive version of the video, thank you for your thumbs up to the video. Thank you for any comments you want to post. These Hangouts are a regular feature that I facilitate via the planeta.com and Planeta Wiki space, among other hats that I wear. You can see I already have hat hair. But we will continue this conversation. I hope I've added the requisite links to what's called the showcase option here on the video and in the show notes as well. So, you know, you have a lot of great reading ahead of you, and so enjoy. Lloyd, thank you so much for your time. It's been an inspiration.